We have just returned from our executive session, and we're now back into open session. Can I get a motion to adjourn, please? I'm sorry. We're going to adjourn the executive session.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Weiner, seconded by Alter. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
6-0 right now.
Oh. I didn't realize Councilor Hermson wasn't here. So motion passes 6-0. All right. We're going to go ahead and get started with our work session for April 5th, 2022. And welcome to everyone that is here in the audience and those that are online. We're going to start with our state-required presentation of the Historic Preservation Certified Local Government Annual Report. Welcome.
Hello, Council. I am Jessica Bristow. I'm the Historic Preservation Planner, and I'm just here to provide you with some highlights of our annual report. Just a tiny bit of background. The Certified Local Government Program that we call the CLG program was established in 1980, and Iowa City joined it by about 1983. It basically encourages historic preservation at the local level using the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. It provides some technical assistance through the State Historic Preservation Office, which we tend to call SHPO, and provides some funding opportunities for preservation activities. Iowa City has 8 historic districts that are all listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and they're also locally designated. We also have 5 conservation districts. That's only a local designation. There's no National Register component. We have 65 local landmarks. 45 of those are also listed in the National Register. This slide shows you some of our, all of our districts. This slide has some general information and one of my favorite images. It's hard to see here, but it does show the districts and little red dots for all of the local landmarks. Our commission consists of 12 seats. 3 of those are open now, and some of them have been open for a while. In 2021, we had 14 commission meetings, and we have a little budget from our NDS Neighborhood and Development Services Department for our annual mailing and travel and education expenses. We also have the Historic Preservation Fund. The report goes through and talks about what the work that we have done as a commission. And the first section, under number 3 in the report, talks about alterations that were done to properties listed in the National Register of Historic Places. We just count those based on the reviews that we have done throughout the year. In 2021, we had 41 of those. We also don't count certificates of no material effect that we issue or work on garages. So there was actually a little bit more than that. This is just one example where a permanent accessibility ramp was designed for the Close Mansion. Questions 4 and 5 in the report talk about our local landmark designation, and we did designate 6 properties in the calendar year, 4 of them in that 100 block of East College Street. We also have 410, 412 Clinton, and the Highlanders Supper Club. Number 6 in the report talks about properties that are only locally designated, so there's no National Register component, that were also altered, and we count these also based on our reviews. So these are mostly local-only landmarks or properties in our conservation districts. In 2021, not counting the certificates of no material effect or work on garages, we had 27 of those. This is one example. It's a house in one of our conservation districts, and the commission approved a screen porch addition to the back of it. Section 8 of our report is really about the work we do with public outreach and education, providing assistance to property owners on preservation issues, working with other groups. We did have 118 applications in 2021. That's the most that we've had, second only to the year of the 2006 tornado when we had 120 applications. One of the biggest forms of assistance we have beyond reviewing and helping with planning and preservation projects is our Historic Preservation Fund. To date, we have given out 5,000 matching grants or no interest loans for properties on, for projects on properties in our districts or locally landmarked. This just happens to be one example at 430 Ronalds where it went through this transformation using 3 different grants. Another big form of public outreach we have is our annual awards program. Last year was the 38th annual. We held it in July. It was postponed a little bit. This year would be 39th. We haven't started planning that yet. The last real section beyond the reporting on the commission are challenges and successes that we have had throughout the year. Of course, we had COVID. We have the open positions on the commission. We also have some difficulties with lack of contractors for people in the community. And then we had the 109 Market Street, which was a success the year before, but because of the agreement falling through, it's now in one of our challenges. Our biggest success of the year was listing our downtown, Iowa City Downtown Historic District in the National Register of Historic Places. This happens to be just a shot of the Ped Mall and a map of the district showing the properties that are contributing and non-contributing and stuff like that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council?
I just think it's actually a really helpful thing to see this once a year, so that we're reminded of the number of historic districts and properties that we have and the work that goes on there.
Yes, I'd like to thank you for your report, because it was interesting to see the actual numbers then, and I was just talking to someone the other day about the history of Iowa City in general, and the need to preserve that and let it be known, because there's just so much history, and particularly, you know, the historic buildings. It's amazing. Some beyond the old Capitol, which most people think of.
Yeah, I always appreciate hearing what work is being done in this field, and I was very surprised to hear how high the application rate was compared, you know, from a yearly standpoint, how high it was this year. And I always look forward to the awards event because I know that, you know, this notion of care is so central to the idea of sustainability, really. I mean, it's historic preservation. These are buildings that people love, and they're willing to care for them and express that love in the caring for the architecture. And so that I don't know, to me that's essential to, you know, preserving Iowa City's image and character and spirit. So thank you and all the commission members and all those in Iowa City who put such love and care into their buildings.
Thank you so much. All right. The next item on our agenda is Forest View Relocation Proposal Update. And I'll just give it to our city manager, Jeff Ruan.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. We don't have anything supplemental for you in terms of a written document, but I did want to share some updates with you verbally this afternoon and allow you to continue to have your discussion to move this forward. So as you recall from your last meeting, there were several questions raised that you had asked staff to look further into, and I want to walk you through those. Mostly, you kind of lump those into 2 categories, the eligibility criteria and then the method in which we are going to require documentation or not require documentation. So I want to start with the eligibility piece of it. So what we've been able to do, or what we're currently in the process of, is trying to figure out how many households were in the Forest View neighborhood at any given point in time over the last couple of years. The Tenants Association, through the Center for Worker Justice, has provided us a very helpful document that shows their accounting of just that, who was there all the way from the 2019 conditional zoning agreement to current day. We also have our own utility records, which we are cross-referencing with that document. And then I have asked, but I have not received from the owner of the park as well. And I'm hoping to have those 3 data sources to really make it very reliable and certain who was there when. But just looking preliminarily at the document that we got from the tenants and the city utility records, there appears to be a little discrepancy, but very minor. So what you might expect in something like that. So we're pretty close. And I'll walk you through the different points in time so you can get an idea how these numbers have changed. So currently, we have between 55 and 59 households at Forest View. If you go back to the eligibility date that the city staff that I recommended to you at your last meeting, that was September of 21, we had 62 to 67 households there. So again, currently 55 to 59, going back to September of last year, 62 to 67. And I just want to be clear that I'm giving you a range because that's the discrepancy in the 2 data sources that we have right now. I'm confident that can be worked out. The other couple dates that you asked us to look at were March of 21 and March of 20. I'll start with March of 21. We have anywhere from 65 to 70 households there at March of 21. Again, comparing that to the previous, I said 62 to 67. So you can see the continual increase as we go back in time there. Now, with March of 21, September of 21, we feel very, very confident that ARPA funds are able to be used for those households. When we go back to March of 20, we believe that ARPA funds can be used. And I say it because I want you to know there's a little bit of degree of uncertainty there. It's not as crystal clear, but we believe we could make a strong case to suggest that ARPA funds could be used back to March of 20, essentially the entrance of COVID into our area here. So if you go back to March of 20, we have 74 to 82 households. 74 to 82 households, March of 20th. We believe we can make a strong case for ARPA. It's not as clear, but we believe we can make that case. And if you go all the way back to the conditional zoning agreement, there is between 82 and 87 households that resided at Forest View at that time. We are confident to say that you cannot, well, we'd have to find an alternative funding source, that we will not be able to use ARPA funds for that. Those households that were there at the time of the CZA but may not have been at least by March of 20th. So you can see that range from start to finish from the conditional zoning agreement is 82 to 87 households to current day 55 to 59. That gives you an idea of how things have changed. If you take kind of the max end of the range at the CZA level, you're looking at about a $1.3 million expenditure on relocation versus the current day would be just under $1 million, about 930. So you're talking all in all a range of about 400,000, speaking in approximates there. The Tenants Association did some preliminary checking on income levels. Remember, there was some discussion about the $40,000 income threshold. They have relayed to us that they have 7 households that are above that threshold, but they are also working to confirm income levels in 16 remaining households. So we don't have firm numbers yet, but somewhere between 7 and at most 23 are making more than that $40,000 threshold. I also want to remind you that it's not just the income, that if we can work with those households and understand their income, we can help cross-reference eligibility with stated federal programs. And even if they're not using those federal programs, if they're eligible to use federal assistance programs and make a little bit more than that $40,000, they still may be able to self-attest there. So a little bit more work to be done there, but that gives you an idea. Just to do the quick math, if there's 7 households above that income threshold and we decide to use other funds to address those households, that's a little over $110,000. So it gives you a little bit of idea of scale there. If all 16 of the remaining households where income has not been able to been pinned down, if all of those were over, which is unlikely, based on the data trends, you'd be looking at non-source funds, non-ARPA source funds of $362,000. Okay, so that's a little bit of the range. That's a lot of numbers, a lot of dates. Can I clarify anything for you at this point on that information?
Can you just go back and you talked about a range of 400K, and it was the difference between 1.3 million and roughly 900K, and what were those monies attached to?
So that's the
population.
If we funded everybody that was at the park with the signing of the CZA, at the upper end of the data that we have right now, it's 87 households. That would be 1.3 million.
Okay, thank you.
And then the 929,000 represents the 59 households that live there now. And of course, our recommendation was that we go back to September, but I thought it was important just to give you those numbers now so you understood the.
And the CZA was in 2019.
2019, yes.
And Jeff, I think there was some question that would it be possible and what would the difference be then that those folks that had already moved out could get a partial, not the grand total of the ones that are still living there? And would that make a difference, and how could we figure that? And is that possible to figure that?
You're right. So at that point, if we're going all the way back to the CZA and we're looking at those, it's maybe 5 households. There's a little bit of uncertainty there, but between that moved out between the CZA and the onset of COVID, it's probably roughly around 5 houses. We would have to use non-ARPA funds, which means that would be taxable for the recipient. And you could adjust that amount. You would have the ability to say, instead of the $15,750, we're going to go back to the $7,200, for example, that was specifically listed in the CZA. You would have that ability to do that at any point in that continuum that you felt was appropriate. The numbers that I quoted were assuming everybody got the same $15,750.
I think it might be helpful for us to move this conversation along a little bit. If we could, documentation, I know you were going to talk about that.
Yeah, I can cover that real quick if you want.
Please,
So
yes.
we still are strongly recommending we follow the self-attest. I think that is definitely the cleanest. If we move off self-attest, I just want to give you kind of a quote from the regs in terms of the burden that we have. It has to be based on academic research or government research publications through analysis of their own data, meaning the city's own data, or through analysis of other data sources. It goes on to say, when quantitative data is not readily available, recipients may also consider qualitative research in sources like resident interviews, feedback from relevant state and local agencies, such as public health departments or social service departments. And it also talks about the need to do that research prior to determining the outcome. So before you determine how to offset that disproportionate impact, you have to prove there is disproportionate impact. And we're kind of past that point now. I think we could probably work around that, but if we're trying to make this less burdensome on the residents, I just don't think we can go down that path. I think we're going to be in a situation where we're doing surveys, we're interviewing folks. It's going to drag this process out quite a bit. I think Councilor Thomas made a good suggestion at the last meeting that if you still want to provide funding for those that are above that income threshold, that maybe you should look at using local funds. And of course, that does introduce taxability. But that would be the method to get this moving the quickest, and I think would be probably best for all involved. I wish we could simply declare it a class without, with just using census data or something like this, but there's not enough there, in my opinion.
So, Jeff, you didn't think we talked about, as far as the disproportionate impact, that the developer, the argument is because of COVID, the costs and the expenses, and this is primarily why they have just washed their hands of this. But you don't feel that's a strong enough argument for that disproportionate
No,
impact?
I don't think that, and I think the evidence that frankly we have is that the project was in jeopardy well before COVID. And unfortunately, I'm sure COVID did not help, but it may have taken a project that was on shaky ground and finally ended it. But you know, our discussions with the developer really fell silent 6 to 8 months prior to COVID starting. So we still think that self-attest is the way is the way to go. I understand it's not perfect, but I think that's going to be best for all involved, and I still think there's some ways that we can assist those that may be over that income threshold.
Thank you. So I do want to just remind council that we'll end our conversation at 5:45 today, but we'll be able to pick this up after our formal meeting. So in order to maybe kind of answer some of the questions that are still lingering out there, I thought maybe we can tackle some of those first. The most simplistic will probably be the documentation. Staff is recommending self-attestment. I wanted to just get council thoughts.
I agree with Jeff's suggestion. I'm happy to see that there really weren't many above the 40K threshold, so it's a manageable figure to address by providing the funding ourselves.
Okay. And then that's the next question that's kind of attached to that. So those that are above the 40K, is council comfortable using funds from another pot of money that is not COVID related? If we should.
Right, with the understanding that some of them may turn out to be eligible for other federal government programs and therefore still be eligible for ARPA funds.
That's correct.
Yeah, which I think, Jeff, you said the word if.
Right.
If they are eligible, and I think that's a very big if. So I think we have to be cautious of that.
Right, I mean, but you could have a family that earns a certain amount and would turn out that they're eligible for SNAP because they have a larger family or something like that, but aren't currently getting benefits,
Right.
for example, so, but yeah.
So I'm seeing a consensus on that. And then the one that may take a little thought process is really the time frame of who would be eligible for the funds. We have all the way back to the CZA, which is in 2019, up until current. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts or suggestions.
Well, I think I was the one that brought that up too, that couldn't they, those ones that were there at the signing of the CZA, they were given that hope and dream of having safe, affordable homes, and I saw the condition of some of the homes that had been abandoned by some of those probably folks, and some that are still standing and some that have been demolished, and I certainly, they were not livable, they were unlivable, and I don't blame those folks for leaving, and I think that they should be compensated in some manner for maybe the cost. They're probably still suffering financially from what they had to put out when they abruptly left because of the condition of their homes. So I'm under the belief that we do have to compensate them at least partially, not for the total, those ones that are still there though.
I do have at least some thought and a proposal that I'll put out there, and I think take it with a grain of salt. You all can take it or leave it. My proposal would be for everyone that's been there within the 2022 year, get 100%. Anyone that was there during 2021 gets 75%, and then 2020 gets 50%, and then 2019 gets 40%. That's just my throw it out there, and then we can, if you don't like it, leave it and throw out your own thoughts. Go ahead, Jen.
But I guess what my initial thought would be to fund everyone from March 2021 through present, and look at the 7,200 number for those who left pre-COVID.
I would agree with that.
and see, so you want to determine how many people were before March 2021, okay.
Before March 20, the beginning, going back to the beginning of COVID, March 20, I'm getting years confused. It's been longer than we think it is. So essentially, I would favor full compensation for people who were there in March 2020, so when COVID began, and when we can definitely also use the ARPA funds, and for the people who were there from the CZA signing but left prior to the beginning of the COVID, the 7,200 number. But that's also just a proposal.
I think I would be in agreement, at least up to the March of 2020, and from the period from March 2020 back to the CZA. I'd love to hear some more input from the Residents Association before coming up. I'm willing to listen to some arguments. My initial reaction is just let's do it the same all the way back to the CZA, sort of where my position starting off on this, but I'm certainly willing to listen to other points of view, and definitely want to make sure we're hearing from the residents before we make a final decision on that. But at least we're in agreement all the way back to March of 2020, I think, at least Councilman Weiner and I.
Yeah, I also, feel that March of 2020 seems like that's a good cutoff point, certainly with respect to the ARPA, and it's great that we have that opportunity to tap into that fund for that. In terms of I do think we need to go back to the 2019 CZA as well, which fortunately is only, it looks like, about 5 more people, roughly. So we're not talking about a large number. I think certainly the $7,200 figure would be a baseline. I too, I think, would be interested in hearing from the Forest View community, but that's the figure that was in the CZA. So I think that would be a starting point for me to be thinking about that.
I'm a little worried about us, continuing to push this out further. I think we know that the residents have asked for the full amount going all the way back to the CZA. So I think we have at least that level of input. And I think just for expediency's sake, my preference would be to try to get as close as we can to getting our staff to a final structure. I like Councilor Weiner's suggestion. I think, holding to the promise of the CZA for those in June, I think it was June of 2019 with the 7,200, and then the larger amount for the period that we believe we can use the ARPA funds of March 2020 going forward.
Just to kind of piggyback on what has been said, and I feel like I've benefited from having a lot of people speak before me, but I do think that the most that we can use the ARPA funds makes a lot of sense. And Jeff, I'm sort of writing furiously, and you said most likely going back to 2020, the ARPA funds can be used. So I definitely want to look into that as expediently as possible. But I remain, like Pauline had said, and like many others, like Laura, we got to be expedient. And I think that we could look to the CZA for sort of a baseline for that small number of households that are not covered by this other. I don't want anyone to get left out. And actually, Mazahir Salih had sent a late email, and I know Kelly sort of gave it to us all, but she makes a really, really important point about getting housing in Iowa City. Mm-hmm. Now is the time that we need to be doing this. And I know everybody here knows that, but I would just sort of put a little bit of weight on that, as Laura did, to say, let's try and figure out what we can do as quickly as possible so that we can get money to people so they can find their home.
Right.
Home.
The clock is literally ticking here. Things are moving along really quickly, and I appreciated the memo from the Center for Worker Justice, because I think that many of us, I'll speak for myself, but I don't know others, we kind of take our credit history for granted. unless we're applying for a home loan or some major loan, and hadn't even give that thought that some of these folks maybe would be able to have a credit rating. And I also haven't rented in this community for a really long time, so I don't know how many landlords require a good credit rating. So that's something to really think about. And so it was mentioned about the 20. Are we married to the 25% amount that you talked about to get to them initially, or could we go with the 50% so that they have enough funds to actually pay up front for a rental unit? Or
What I might say is that when we come from our formal meeting, we're going to come back to our work session.
Okay.
And I think we can continue
can-
the
'cause
conversation,
that's a
and
good
that'll be a
question.
part, that was
Good.
another item.
Good.
Just talking about when we will distribute the
concern.
funds
That's a big concern.
and what percentage.
Right.
So why don't we hold off until after, until, we'll conclude for now, and then we'll come back at 6 PM to start our formal meeting. All right, we'll see you in about 13 minutes. It is now 6 p.m., and I'm going to call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Alter,
Here.
Burgess,
Here.
Harmson,
Here.
Taylor,
Here.
Teague,
Here.
Thomas,
Here.
Weiner.
Here.
Well, welcome to everyone that is here present in the audience, and then to anyone that is online. We're going to start with the first agenda item, which is 2A, 2 is proclamations, and I'm going to start with the Fair Housing Month, which is 2A. One second here. All right, here we go. Whereas April 22nd marks the 54th anniversary of the passage of Title VIII of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, commonly known as the Federal Housing Act, and whereas Iowa City Human Rights Ordinance has prohibited discrimination in the area of housing since 1964, and whereas equal opportunity for all regardless of age, color, creed, disability, familial status, gender identity, marital status, national origin, presence or absence of dependents, public assistance, source of income, race, religion, sex, or sexual orientation is a fundamental goal of our nation, state, and city. Whereas equal access to housing is an important component of this goal, as fundamental as the right to equal education and employment. And whereas housing is a critical component of family and community health and stability. And whereas housing choice impacts our children's access to education, our ability to seek and retain employment options, the cultural benefits we enjoy, the extent of our exposure to crime and drugs, and the quality of health care we receive in emergencies. And whereas the laws of this nation and our city seek to ensure such equality of choice for all transactions involving housing, and whereas ongoing education outreach and monitoring are key to raising awareness of fair housing principles, practices, rights, and responsibilities, and whereas only through continued cooperation, commitment, and support of all Iowa City residents can barriers to fair housing be removed. Now, therefore, I, Bruce Teague, Mayor of Iowa City, do hereby proclaim April 2022 to be Fair Housing Month, and to receive this is Human Rights Commissioner Chair Jason Glass.
On behalf of the Iowa City Human Rights Commission, thank you, Mayor Teague and members of the City Council for recognizing our shared values around Fair Housing Month. Working towards fairness and non-discrimination in housing is critical work, and there are many in our community who have dedicated a significant part of their lives to ensuring it. I hope recognizing this month helps to highlight the work that they are doing and the fact that we have so much more to do. I encourage Iowa City residents to better understand the history of exclusionary housing practices, both across the country and right here. The Iowa City Office of Equity and Human Rights has resources and education on our past failings, the progress we've made, and the work yet to accomplish. As a member of the Human Rights Commission the last couple of years, I've had the privilege of accepting several proclamations on a variety of important topics. Like all the others, this one articulates some important points. Statements are important, but only in so much as they inspire action. Words that are not accompanied by deeds ring hollow. Let us not allow this to happen in this case. Housing, like food and clean water, is a basic human need. Not much else is possible in a person's life if these needs are not met. A community in which residents are struggling with these basic needs cannot be successful. Let us challenge ourselves to do more to lift up our neighbors. It is right and just that we should recognize this month through a proclamation, but do not allow that to be the end of the effort. Let us also be inspired to put that recognition into action. All of us, individually and together. Thank you.
Thank you. The next proclamation is 2B, National Community Development Week. Whereas the Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership programs support viable communities by providing safe, decent, affordable housing, creating safe neighborhoods, helping seniors live independently, and investing in our next generation. And whereas in our community, 47 years of CDBG funding has developed a strong network of relationships among local governments, residents, businesses, and nonprofit organizations that provide services and help make possible our commitment to meet the needs of low and moderate income residents. And whereas the home program has allowed the city, with the help of private and nonprofit partners, to create and preserve affordable housing for low-income families for the past 30 years. And whereas CDBG and home are some of the federal government's most effective means to revitalize communities across the country, the importance of CDBG and home to meet the unique needs of local communities is widely recognized. And whereas in the last 5 years, $3.3 million in CDBG funds and nearly $2.5 million in home funds has been invested in Iowa City. These funds help low-income homeowners complete necessary improvements to their property, allow for accessibility improvements in local parks, increase the quality and availability of affordable housing throughout the community, and support agencies serving our at-risk youth, elderly, and residents with disabilities. And whereas Iowa City, Iowa, and other local governments have clearly demonstrated the capacity to administer and customize the CDBG and home programs to identify, prioritize, and resolve pressing local problems, such as affordable housing, neighborhood and human service needs, job creation and retention, and property redevelopment. Now therefore, I, Bruce Teague, Mayor of Iowa City, do hereby proclaim April 11th through April 15th, 2022 as National Community Development Week in Iowa City, Iowa, and urge all citizens to join us in recognizing and supporting the important roles the CDBG and home programs play in our community. And to receive this is going to be our Housing and Community Development Chair, Matt.
Thank you to Mayor Teague, to the City Council, to all the members of the city staff who do so much work to support what we do at the Housing and Community Development Commission. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that CDBG Home Money has done recently. Mayor Teague, of course, pointed out that it provides millions of funding for marginalized members of the Iowa City community. And just in the last year alone, we've sent recommendations to the City Council for funding Shelter House's efforts to end homelessness, to fund, just in the last couple of months, DVIP's efforts to provide housing for domestic violence victims, and Inside Out Reentry's efforts to provide housing for people returning to society from prison. So not only does this provide millions to Iowa City, it provides funding in particular for members of the community who are very difficult to reach with city policy. So I think that's one very nice thing that CDBG Home does. And thank you again, and hopefully this will provide 47 more years of funding for Iowa City.
Thank you. We are moving on to our consent agenda, items 3 through 8. Could I get a motion to approve it, please?
So moved, Taylor.
Second, Weiner.
All right. And anyone from the public like to discuss any item that is on our consent agenda? If so, please step to the podium. If you are online, please raise your hand and I'll acknowledge you. Welcome.
Hello. My name is John Doe, and that is the name that you should be putting in the minutes, because that is the name I'm providing you, and I do not consent to you putting any other name on there.
Anyone else like to address an item that is on our consent agenda? Seeing no one, council discussion. Roll call, please.
Teague,
Yes?
Thomas,
Yes.
Weiner,
Yes.
Alter,
Yes.
Burgess,
Yes.
Harmson,
Yes.
Taylor.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. We're on to item number 9, which is our community comment. This is an opportunity for members of the community to come and speak about things that are not on our agenda. And if you would like to speak, please come to the podium. There is a sign-in sheet on the side. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes, no more than 3 minutes. Please state your name and where you're from. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm going to pull my mask down here so everyone can hear me. My name is Nancy Bird. I'm with the Iowa City Downtown District. I'm the executive director there, and thank you for taking public comment tonight, Mayor and City Council members. I'm here tonight because I want to call to your attention a letter that we submitted on March 10th that went to the City Council, and we're looking for feedback on the letter. Several of you asked for ways that you could support downtown businesses during our kind of, I don't want to call it post-COVID, but the times where we're trying to get back to a normal economic, realm. And so we tried to work with the board of directors of the downtown district and our businesses to come up with 2 things we thought would be really helpful. And we narrowed them down. One is the street and sidewalk cafe fee reductions. We have roughly 40 cafes downtown. They've become really, especially in the summer months, clearly, because that's when they're out the most, but very important to doing business. And it's an easy way, we think, that, we submitted a case study last summer to demonstrate what other cities are doing around the country with their cafes. And Iowa City's cafe, the fees for the cafes is actually on the high end. So we thought this would be a really good opportunity without changing regulations or ordinances or anything else to demonstrate some support for these businesses that are, quite frankly, still impacted. As you might notice, fees or the hours of operation have changed for restaurants. There's days where people are closed, labor shortages, inflation, food costs, all these things are challenging. So we thought this would be a really great opportunity for the city to recognize that and help support some of our hospitality industry downtown. The other one is financial support for Smids, for independent business assistant programs. And this is really a financial request, working in solidarity with the South District SMID, who is not quite formed yet, as you know. But this is an opportunity to recognize that these organizations are set up to specifically support clustered businesses in specific areas. And we have very great, just one-on-one opportunities to work with those on the margins, those that are underrepresented, and those that need additional assistance that are left out of traditional systems, including lending, including simple things that it takes more time to really address. So having additional capacity in these organizations, really with direct financial assistance from the city, is a really good nod to demonstrating that the city's here to help support. And I feel like we've got a proven track record in how we can do this, and I know that the South District's going to do great as well. And our conversation, primarily with Angie Jordan, is that once we get these things going and we can set kind of a tenor for how these services could lay out, the downtown district doesn't need to own that anymore, and they can move on their own. But it's a good way to move forward in 2023. So thank you for hearing our comments, and we look forward to your response.
Thank you. And then, welcome. There's no one online.
Hello, John here. So I'm just gonna read a little bit of this police blotter that y'all should have seen by now. 3/31/2022 at 10:23 p.m. Public citizen disposition information, location, shelter house, location address 429 Southgate Avenue. Details: JKSO, which I think stands for Johnson County Sheriff's Office, dropped off a mail here earlier. Shelter staff now saying that overflow is not a thing and the subject is not permitted to spend the night in the lobby since bed space is taken up. Requests been picked up. Now, let me read you Jeff Rune's words from a few months ago that were printed in Little Village. The city has public facilities such as the library and recreation centers that often serve as warming locations during operating hours, 7 days per week into evening hours. We actively partner with shelter house for overnight accommodations, and again, nobody has been turned away due to lack of capacity. Does the city still stand by that? If the city does still stand by that, you're just okay openly lying, which everyone that like actually works at the house community knew that was a lie, because like we know the houses community, like Shelter House. I don't know why like you just believe their lies. You call Shelter House. I called Shelter House before this meeting, and I was told that I was childish because I keep asking them, because I have the audacity to care about the houseless community. Because I asked them, so if I need shelter tonight, can I get shelter? They said, well, no, you have to be put on the list. Which, if there was not a capacity problem, there would be no such thing as a list. But there's clearly a capacity problem, and they clearly turn people away because of capacity. I know people who've been forced to live out in parks now because the winter shelter closed about a week or so, over a week or so ago, and there's been snow on the ground since the winter shelter is closed. And that should never close, because even if we had wonderful summer weather, people still shouldn't be forced to live outside, especially not when we have the poor weather we have continuing today. So I will read my email that I sent to y'all that only 2 of you responded to. Thank you, Janice and Sean. The rest of y'all, you ignored it, which I was expecting. So here it is. Housing crisis. Hello. As y'all are aware by now, I'm sure, on March 31st, Shelter House called the police on individual seeking shelter. The reason they were turned away is because lack of capacity, a direct contradiction, and irrefutable proof that the city has been lying for Shelter House and allowed the housing crisis to continually force people to live outdoors, while the city does essentially nothing. You don't get to keep washing your hands of the responsibility to protect Iowa City's people. Your inaction and action perpetuates houselessness by your refusal to have a robust public housing program in the city, which is like the upstream problem that causes houselessness. You refuse to even provide emergency shelter to those currently forced on the streets. Do something about this immediately by opening a 24/7 no-barrier shelter that's open 365 days a year.
Thank you. We're going to
That
move
is
on.
immediate, as in a matter of 2 weeks action. You also need to have a serious plan to
Noah?
provide public housing and actually
Noah,
solve the
we're
house.
done.
If you had responded to my email, Bruce, I wouldn't be doing this. I'm not taking up
Noah,
most of
we're
your
done.
time, but I'm going to take up a few seconds.
Yes.
No, not fuck around with your $1 million
Your time
affordable
is up.
housing
Please
program
turn off the mic
and actually
we'll
do
move on
something to do.
to the next
for-
item on our agenda. We're on item number 10, which is planning and zoning. And just wondering if the majority of council is inclined to vote with, this one, isn't it? All right, so 10A is going to be vacation and conveyance of right-of-way. Ordinance vacating approximately 3,000 square feet of public right-of-way abutting 829 Kirkwood Avenue and authorizing conveyance to Ritu, Jane, and Bradley J. Polson. And I'm going to open up the public hearing. And welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Danielle Sisman, Neighborhood and Development Services. As you stated, this is a vacation request for property located approximately along the southern or rear boundary of 829 Kirkwood Avenue. This is a 20-foot wide, 150-foot long public alley right-of-way, in which alley was never constructed. It's shown here in the dotted outline overlaid on the aerial image, showing the house owned by the applicant just to the north of the vacated area. If granted, the vacation will allow for a contiguous lot at 829 Kirkwood Avenue, and the property owner is interested in building a garage behind their home, which is currently not possible due to the alley bisecting what they own. Their ownership is shown in that hashed outline there. As with all vacations, staff does review criteria related to the city's interest in behalf of holding land in trust of the public. And we review the criteria to make sure that if we were to vacate something, it would not impact negatively the public's interest. So in this case, the right-of-way is not improved. There's no actual alley built there. So it's not currently being used by any pedestrians or vehicles, including emergency or utility vehicles. The proposed right-of-way vacation will not impact, therefore, access by neighboring properties, and actually there is an existing north-south alley which will remain and continue to be used. And the right-of-way does not contain any city utilities, and any private utilities that are located there without an easement have been put on notice that they'll need to make accommodation for that if that is the case. As far as the development steps here, this shows the vacation that we're considering today in green. A previous vacation was considered in 2008, but deferred by the applicant at that time, who were different property owners than the owners today. So after the vacation and conveyance is considered by City Council, the only remaining step would be a building permit review. So based on a review of the relevant criteria, staff did recommend vacation of the alley right-of-way. At their March 2nd, 2022 meeting, Planning and Zoning Commission concurred with staff's recommendation and voted 4-0 to also recommend vacation of the alley. That concludes staff report, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Great. Any questions? Thank you. And then anyone from the public like to address this topic, please come forth to the podium. You can sign in if you would like to address council. Welcome.
Hello, my name is John, and I do not want to be at this meeting. I fully planned on not being at this meeting today, and then I was checking the police spotter, and I saw that this house that people are being forced to live on, and I know people being forced to live on the streets once again.
This is
I
item
don't give
number
a fucking
10A.
damn. Here's the thing. Fuck your rules.
Conveyance of
Fuck your
right-of-ways.
rules. I don't care.
Either-
the right of way is people need housing. And I'm tired of having to be forcing your stupid
Okay.
civility to
You
listen
know
to
what?
me, because you're not going to listen to me no matter what.
You're done. Please cut
I'm
the
not
mic.
done.
Would anyone else like to address this topic? Would anyone else like to address this topic? If not, I'm going to close the public hearing. Could I get a motion to give consideration, please?
So moved. Taylor?
Second,
by-
Weiner.
Moved by Taylor, seconded by Weiner. And council discussion.
This house has actually been something that I've seen change hands a number of times over probably the past decade. And so I think that this is a great step that the new owners want to actually create a livable way for them to access their home. And it also potentially, if ever it turns over in the market, it's another great selling point. So I'm completely in favor of this. It's a lovely addition.
I agree. It's a lovely property. I drive by there quite a lot, and the current owner has done a lot to refurbish it, and it looks really nice. And I think if this will help the livability of their home to have a garage, I'm totally in favor of it.
Yes.
Other houses in that along Kirkwood there have been able to build garages. It makes sense that that we grant this.
Okay. Any other comments by council? Are we ready?
Yep.
Motion, can I get roll call, please?
Thomas,
Yes.
Weiner,
Yes.
Alter,
Yes.
Burgess,
Yes.
Harmson,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Teague.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. We are on to item number 11, which is asphalt resurfacing 2022. This is a resolution approving project manual and estimate of cost for the construction of the asphalt resurfacing 2022 project, establishing amount of bid security to accompany each bid, directing city clerk to post notice to bidders, and fixing time and place for receipts of bids. I'm going to open the public hearing. And welcome.
I'm Mari Van Dyke. I'm with the Engineering Division. So this is an annual maintenance project. It focuses on pavement milling and asphalt overlay. So basically, with an overlay, we remove the surface of the pavement and then replace it with new asphalt. So with this project, we'll also complete curb and gutter repairs, storm sewer intake repairs, and curb ramp replacements. So here is a map of the streets we'll be working on this year. For overlay, we will be doing Taylor Drive from Highway 6 to south of Tracy Lane, Bancroft Drive from Tracy Lane to south of Crosby Lane, Crosby Lane from Bancroft Drive to Sycamore Street, Rundell Street from Sheridan Avenue to Jackson Avenue, Lower Muscatine Road from Fair Meadows Boulevard to the fire station, Bloomington Street from Dodge Street to Governor Street, and Meyer Avenue from Raritt Road to north of Kessler Road. And then we also chip seal certain streets. So this year those roads will be Slothauer Road, Taft Speedway, North Dubuque Road, Taft Avenue,
a section of Sycamore Street that's east of Gilbert, and then Soccer Park Road. So the estimated construction cost is $1,470,000. And for schedule, we are planning on opening bids April 27th, awarding the contract May 3rd, and then construction would be from this May to this November. So that's kind of a summary of the project, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Any questions? Thank you. All right. Would anyone from the public like to address this topic? If so, please step to the podium. Seeing no one, I'm going to close the public hearing. Can I get a motion to approve, please?
So moved, Thomas.
Second, Burgess.
Council discussion? Roll call, please.
Weiner,
Yes.
Alter,
Yes.
Burgess,
Yes.
Harmson,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Teague,
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Item number 12 is convey 702 Park Road. This is a resolution authorizing conveyance of auditor's parcel 2022005 to Charles C. Wonder and Marcia L. Wonder. And I'm going to open up the public hearing. And any staff comments on this?
Not much to add here, Mr. Mayor. This is just an opportunity for to quiet title on some property that for which there is a title objection raised. The city doesn't really feel like they're giving up anything, frankly, in providing this, but we want to help out these property owners by quit claiming, as opposed to a warranty deed, quit claiming what deeds we do or what any interest we may have in this property, so they can go forth with their property rights.
Thank you. Anyone from the public like to address this topic? Seeing no one, I'm going to close the public hearing. Could I get a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Moved by Alter, seconded by Weiner. Council discussion? Roll call.
Does this sort of thing ever come up? I don't remember seeing this sort of thing before. It's like a, do people make objections to?
Yes, oftentimes when there's a property that's to be sold, the property owners get a title opinion from a lawyer, and they call out any number of things, the zoning and liens too, but easements and that kind of thing. And if they find that, in their opinion as a lawyer, there is a cloud on the title or a portion of the lot to be purchased, then they call that out in their written title opinion. And so I haven't seen that title opinion here, but it's my understanding that that's what took place. The attorney who offered that title opinion raised this objection. They of course came to the city and said, well, hold on, do you guys think you own this? And we said, no. We don't believe you have any interest. We don't certainly need any interest. And so we're just, quit claiming, which again is not offering a warranty. We're just saying, whatever rights we have in this property, we think it's nothing. It's yours. That cleans up their title. They can purchase it, free and clear.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Roll call, please.
Alter,
Yes.
Burgess,
Yes.
Harmson,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Teague,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Weiner.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Item number 13, vending cart appeal. This is appeal of denial of application for permit to operate a mobile vending cart. There was correspondence included in 422 as a late handout, which the applicant withdrew this submission, and no further action is needed. Could I get a motion to accept the correspondence?
So moved.
Second, Taylor.
Moved by Weiner, seconded by Taylor. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Item number 14, council appointments. Applicants must reside in Iowa City and be 18 years of age unless specific qualifications are stated. 14A is Community Police Review Board. Police Review Board has one vacancy for a current or formal peace officer to fill an unexpired term effective upon appointment through June 30th, 2025. I think we'll take these all separate today. And so the first one will be, we'll talk about the current or former peace officer for the Community Police Review Board, CPRB. Are there any suggestions on who that will be? And there's no gender requirement.
I would move that we appoint David Schwint to that position.
I think based on the ordinance that we just passed, he wouldn't quite be eligible yet for that. Is that correct, Jeff?
That's correct. If you recall, the council had inserted a 2-year waiting period
waiting.
for
Oh, okay.
anybody that's separated employment from the city, and he has not quite made that threshold, met that threshold yet.
That's unfortunate.
I have a question actually about another candidate who I don't know if this qualifies as a peace officer or not. It is Stuart
Joe
Vetke. And he notes that he worked as a paralegal in the military, and he worked with military police. How does that fit in the universe of a former peace officer?
I mean, my sense is that the council's been very
broad in its
application. Interpretation of anyone who has.
Yeah, it's not a hard requirement in the ordinance where you have to have been a law enforcement officer. It's more of a general recognition that somebody that has either been in the profession or had exposure to the profession in some way can bring a valuable perspective to the discussions that they have. So if you felt that somebody, while not a law enforcement, has a glimpse into that profession that may be valuable for the overall discussion, then I think you could include that.
I mean, there's part of me that at the same, I recognize, and we've had the discussion before about the value of having a peace officer, a former peace officer who kind of understands the mechanisms and the structure, who can help kind of guide or at least provide some clarification for other commission members, that there's that correlation. But I feel like if we are thinking about this in sort of the spirit of guidance, this applicant might also suit and provide some valuable insights in his current capacity through working at GuideLink and as a pastor, but then also through this former experience that he has had working in the military. So that's kind of where I was coming from, hoping, and again, you all know my vote, previous, that this would be something I would be comfortable with as far as someone who sort of is aware of sort of the structures of law enforcement, but without necessarily being of the police department.
I do think a part of what was asked by the CPRB board when they brought that forth was someone that had knowledge of police operations in a way, like what are the protocols, the things that are expected of the police officers. And I don't believe that outside of David Swint, who isn't eligible, meets that requirement. None of the applicants that were submitted. So I guess with that being said, I don't, in this moment in time, feel comfortable appointing, I believe you said Stewart, as the peace officer.
Right.
But that's just me.
Fair enough.
It's also a newer position. So, there may need to be more advertisement, potentially.
Yeah. Mayor, that's actually, that code language has been in there for maybe since the inception. I think it's maybe changed a little bit over time, and Eric may be pulling it up now to get the exact language from the code. But we have tried over the years to make sure that somebody that has law enforcement experience or related experience would be on the board. At times, there's been some success in finding those applicants, and in other times, we haven't had that applicant pool, and the council's had to find either somebody in a related field or or just we went without that perspective for a while. So I think you do have that flexibility, and it is language that has been in there for quite some time.
Thank you.
I have looked up the language. It says appointments, well, I'm sorry, let me skip ahead. Appointments to the board shall include one current or former peace officer, in quotes, as that term is defined by state law, except that a peace officer employed as such by the city of Iowa City within 5 years, recently amended to 2, of the appointment date shall not be appointed to the board. And the city council reserves the right to waive the residency requirement for good cause shown, and so forth. The city council also reserves the right for good cause shown to waive the requirement that the board include one current or former peace officer. So I'm quickly seeing if I can find the state definition of peace officer. I think I'm getting close, but I don't want to delay discussions. Again, consistent with what city manager has told you, you can waive it. And so what's kind of most important is that you're looking for that, experience and expertise from that member, whether, any one person strictly applies or strictly qualifies as a peace officer under the state code definition or not, isn't maybe the end-all be-all because of that ability for you folks to waive it. But I'll keep looking for that definition if you folks are interested.
I think while I'm seeing some heads shake, while our attorney is looking that up, why don't we go on to 14B and have the discussion about the Community Police Review Board, 2 vacancies to fill an unexpired term plus a 4-year term effective upon appointment through June 30th, 2026. And this one is for 1 male and 1 female. And I guess, I don't know if it's fair because we need to determine if Stewart
Right.
is an option.
Well, for the female, I would put forth Yasmina Sahir, who's a younger community member, and she was very forthcoming in wanting a world in which police did not have to exist, but then explaining how she felt that she could contribute to the board in applying the applicable standards and, setting aside essentially that because we're in a community where most people want police.
I had some reservations about her just because of her history. I mean, as you said, she was straightforward and honest that she's a member of the abolitionist group, but I myself, I think when I have strong opinions of something or even belong to a group, it's hard to separate yourself from that, and I don't know how she would be able to do that. I don't want to speak for her, but how she could separate herself from like an anti-police thing to serve on the CPRB. That's just my opinion.
So I thought it was interesting or perhaps informative that she's also studying criminology in terms of sort of providing background. I just found her, I hear what you're saying, Councilor Taylor, completely, and at the same time I found it very enlightening that she was able to essentially, I thought, strike a really good balance in her application and has I think some background that could be really useful on the board. We don't have very many young members at all at this point, and with her experience and her background.
Yeah, I have to agree with Councilor Taylor that I think because of potentially what we've seen as far as like the strong abolitionist thoughts and feelings, that it would be very hard, in my opinion, not knowing this person, of course, if they'll be able to separate. I think it would be very difficult to really look at the situation at hand and make decisions based on that without the abolish the police, at the forefront of their mind. So I think that would be very hard to appoint this individual. I actually had issues with all but really one of the female applicants, and then that one that I would have supported is actually on our Civil Commission, Service Commission. And so typically we don't assign two people to the same commission, or we don't assign people to two commissions. And so for the female, I would suggest that we wait for more applicants. Now for the male, I again did not consider Stewart to be our public officer, a representative, and I don't know if you have a...
I do. I mean, I'm not sure I would want to swear to this definition, but based on my quick research, it appears that peace officer includes all the people we would normally think of as police officers, sheriff's deputies, state troopers, but also game officers, DNR, those kind of things. I could not see anything to indicate that someone who had served in the military, even in a military police capacity, would be considered a peace officer under state code provisions. And so I think that, I'm sorry, I've forgotten Stewart's last name. I don't think he would be considered a peace officer for purposes of the CPRB. If I can opine further, Mr. Mayor, given your comments about one of the female applicants who already serves on another board and commission, one possibility the council could consider is to appoint that person contingent upon her resignation from the other board or commission, and then set a date and time certain, for example, the Wednesday before your next meeting, so that if that person declines to resign, then you would be able to move forward with the next meeting and appoint someone else if you so chose. Of course, you don't have to do that, but that's just one possibility for your consideration.
Thank you.
Well, and I think with that individual, we reappointed them not too long ago to the Civil Service Commission.
About a year.
A year ago, okay.
I think at the time she had also applied for CPRB, but got on the civil service.
Okay.
Or it was a re-up.
I just know that we've had some trouble sometimes filling those seats on the Civil Service Commission, so I just want to be cognizant of that.
I do, no, I hear what you're saying, and I would agree. I wonder, I guess I would propose that we do the appointment as suggested. Do the appointment with the option of stating that Melissa would have to resign from the Civil Service Commission, and just giving her that date for resignation if she accepts it or not. But that would be my recommendation there. And then now that Stewart, I don't know what council walk away from that was, now that Stewart is not considered a peace officer, I would also suggest Stewart.
I mean, I think that I like Stewart. I liked his application a lot. I think that my personal view is I think we can go ahead and appoint 3 people if we think there are 3 people who are well qualified. And essentially for now, because there has been some regular turnover on there, at least get them sort of fully staffed with the notion that within a year or two that there will probably be an opening and we would be able to maybe at that point it'll be 2 years since David Schwent has stopped working for the city, and he would consider reapplying, because I personally think he would be an excellent former law enforcement representative to have on there, given his background in the city. But so the other person that, in addition to Stewart, that I liked was that I thought could be really helpful on there is Ricky Downing, who worked for several decades as a nurse, and could bring another very interesting perspective to it.
The one positive about his application is that he didn't have a lot of knowledge, and I think about the CPRB, and I think that can be a positive for fresh eyes coming in with a lot of history. So I could support Ricky Downing.
I could
But what are
support
other-
Stewart. I could support Stewart. I think he's an excellent candidate and good background. I liked Gerald Wickham too. I thought he had some good experience and would be a good fit on
Who, I'm sorry?
Wickham, Gerald Wickham. although he applied for many things, but he said he was interested in serving in any capacity. So
I would be supportive of Stuart. I appreciated his experience as a part-time pastor. I do think these questions of, police review, having that kind of as a baseline, seems like it would be, could be valuable on the commission. I'm fine with Melissa and Ricky Downing as well. He noted that he had many interactions with law enforcement in his work in healthcare, which I thought also gave him some background in terms of this world that the CPRB is living in.
So I'm hearing majority support for Stewart. I think I'm at 3 people for Ricky Downing.
I like him too.
Okay, so Ricky Downing. Maybe and support it, yep. And then Melissa Ginseng. I know that I've heard at least 2, maybe 3. What are thoughts? It would be contingent and it would come back to us.
And under this, as described, I would be all right with Melissa. The only issue is then we'll have to backfill if she decides to resign. But it sounds like because her application for this is so recent, and she also acknowledges on it that she is a member of another board, she seems to be completely cognizant of that fact.
Do we have any, awareness of which commission is harder to fill, right? I mean, if she were to move over to CPRB, would that be hurting the other commission by her absence?
I mean, it's just a 3-person commission, right? The Civil Service Commission, right?
Yeah.
So they would be down to 2 people until they could find a 3rd person. And I think one person on that commission, did their term just lapse? Are we going to have to reappoint someone?
I believe you recently reappointed that person.
Okay.
I think it was Ann Rhodes on the Civil Service Commission.
So it's, okay, thanks. Thank you.
You'd have 2 experienced members.
So we have 2 experienced people. I expect we could probably eventually find a 3rd, but maybe David Schwint would want to be on the Service Commission. So, he's certainly experienced with civil service.
So it sounds like there's at least 3 people for Melissa. Are you not quite? Okay, right. I think we have a 4th. So look like we have majority for Melissa Jensen with the contingency that has been set. Why don't we go ahead to the next one, which will be 4C, Public Art Advisory Committee. And there is 1 vacancy to fill an unexpired term effective upon appointment through June 30th, 2023. And any nominations there?
the requirement is a female, and we had 1 male, 1 female applicant, so the only female was Anita Young. If people feel that she would qualify, I would say we should appoint her.
I would agree with that.
She has a very strong art background.
Yeah.
I liked her application, and I have to confess, I didn't note that a female was needed, and she was my choice anyway. So I think agreed.
Yeah, she was her application was good, so, all right. So, I don't have, so could I get a motion to approve for Community Police Review Board, Melissa Ginseng, Stuart Vander Vaget, and Ricky Downing. And for Public Art Advisory Committee, remind me the name of the female again.
Anita Young.
Anita Young with a J.
Anita Young with a J.
Do-
Could I get a motion, please?
If I may, Mr.
We
Mayor,
need to-
again, just if I can add the caveat that Melissa Jensen's application, or I should say appointment, would be contingent upon her resignation from the Civil Service Commission no later than April 13th of this year at 5 p.m.
Yes.
And with Police Community Review Board or Community Police Review Board, do we need to appoint one of those to, designate one of those people to fill the partial, the vacant position?
The police officer,
Or
the peace officer.
Right, just because that's the one that someone just resigned from, so it's not a full term.
Okay, I think we would have to waive that requirement.
No, I mean waive the requirement, but do we have to decide who gets the
Yes.
4-year term, who gets the
Yes.
remainder of that one term, and who gets the other terms?
Any thoughts?
My thoughts would be that Melissa would take the shortened term since she's coming from one commission already. So she's essentially serving currently, and then it'd just be that she's moving to another one. I don't know if that logic works for anyone, but that's a suggestion.
I can live with that. I did hear a lot of consensus for Stewart. So maybe, Ricky Downing, if someone is, but I can live with Melissa.
Well, I would propose then Stuart Vandervector for the 4-year term. That Melissa to fill the unexpired term, and Ricky Downing to fill the other two? I'm completely confused. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The other
full
long-
term.
The other full term.
Yeah.
All right, so are we in agreement with what Councilor Weiner just said? Did you get that?
So that's plugging Melissa into the peace officer
Correct.
unexpired term.
Yes.
And she could also reapply if she wanted to
For a full term.
at the
Yeah.
end.
All right, so, based on all of the, what's been said, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Never have a-
I'm sorry, do we have?
I don't think we actually had a motion in a second in the end.
Oh, I didn't do a motion.
So you asked for a
Oh,
motion.
I was
but
doing
then-
a
but then-
motion
but
and
then-
no
but
one,
then- there we
okay.
go.
That's right.
Could I have the motion, please?
So moved, Thomas.
Second Weiner.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. We are on to item number 15, which is announcements of vacancies new. Applicants must reside in Iowa City and be 18 years of age unless specific qualifications are stated. Airport Commission, 2 vacancies to fill a 4-year term. Historic Preservation Commission at large, 1 vacancy to fill a 3-year term. Historic Preservation Commission Brown Street, 1 vacancy to fill a 3-year term. Historic Preservation Commission Jefferson Street, 1 vacancy to fill a 3-year term. Historic Preservation Commission Summit Street, 1 vacancy to fill a 3-year term. Housing and Community Development, 3 vacancies to fill a 3-year term. Library Board of Trustees, 1 vacancy to fill an unexpired term upon appointment through June 30th, 2027. Correspondence included in council packet. Planning and Zoning Commission, 1 vacancy to fill a 5-year term. Applications must be received by 5 p.m. Tuesday, May 10th, 2022. Could I get a motion to accept correspondence?
So moved, Vargas?
Second, Thomas.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Announcements of vacancy previous. Applicants must reside in Iowa City and be 18 years of age unless specific qualifications are stated. Airport Zoning Board of Adjustment, 1 vacancy to fill a 5-year term. Airport Zoning Commission Iowa City Representative, 1 vacancy to fill a 6-year term. Board of Appeals Building Design Professional, 1 vacancy to fill a 5-year term. Historic Preservation Commission East College Street, 1 vacancy to fill a 3-year term. Historic Preservation Commission Jefferson Street, 1 vacancy to fill an unexpired term. Housing and Community Development Commission, 1 vacancy to fill an unexpired term. Housing and Community Development Commission, 1 vacancy to fill an unexpired term. Public Art Advisory Commission, 1 vacancy to fill an unexpired term. Public Art Advisory Commission, 1 vacancy to fill an unexpired term. Vacancies will remain open until filled. We're on to item number 17, which is City Council information. I do know that we have our Johnson County, we'll talk about that in our work session.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, couple of things. Would like to recognize that the University of Iowa student government held a vigil for Ukraine this past weekend at the old Capitol in the rain, and it had about 20 or so different, 25 people, I think, showed up. So a nice little crowd. And also like to point out in the packet today that there are, it's a letter there from me with information about the movie A Decent Home, a documentary about the mobile home crisis, which will be filming at Film Scene on April 28th at 7 p.m. Tickets are on sale now. This particular film looks at the mobile home crisis through the lens of 2 communities, one here in North Liberty, Iowa, and one in Aurora, Colorado. You'll see a lot of familiar faces here from Johnson County in part of the film. And it's an important film. It really looks into the issue, does some digging into through the lens of people's lived experiences, as well as digging into some of the policy issues that are ongoing in our community and in our state and in our country. So I would highly recommend to members of the council, city staff, and any members of the public who can make it that evening. It would be worth your time to go and check out this particular film.
Can you repeat that date and time and place?
Yes, April 28th at 7 p.m. At Film Scene here in Iowa City. And it's in the special events and documentaries film on their webpage. Hopefully I get that correct. Oh, I should probably also note that the City of Iowa City's Human Rights Office of Human Rights is also co-sponsoring the screening of this film. So.
I actually have 2 quick announcements. One that I think is really cool is that Midwest One sponsors an art contest citywide for students, and their winners are going to get a reception this Thursday at Midwest One. I think it's just over here on Clinton, for the kids' art exhibit, and so that's going to be exciting. And that's at 5 o'clock, and it's open to 5 to 7, open to the public. And then also here in the room, but then for anyone who's listening, the South District Neighborhood Association has their annual Team Up to Clean Up on the Broadway, Sycamore Trails, Weatherby Park, and it is open to help come sort of prep the beds, pick up garbage, plant some seeds, and there's a sign-up genius, and you can access it by going to the South District Neighborhood Association's Facebook page. So that's coming up, and it's April 24th from 9 to noon. It is a Sunday, but it goes quick, and it's fun. So those are 2 announcements.
I just wanted to plug a couple climate action things that we have going. On Monday at noon is another in the series of the, it's called like the Speaking Of series. Fantastic format with Sarah Gardner and Jane Welch just talking to each other in a Zoom meeting. Very engaging. And this topic on Monday is reasons for hope relating to climate action. So I'm very excited to check that out. And then we have the Lucas Farms Energy Blitz, which I was trying to look up the date and time and hoping city staff might have that handy because it's coming up here. But there's volunteer opportunities for that as well. I'm sure it's on icgov.org. If you look for the Energy Blitz, I know they're seeking volunteers. That occurred in the South District last year. Really cool program where they have a whole bunch of volunteers come into the neighborhood and distribute boxes with a lot of energy efficiency information, LED light bulbs, whistle for your furnace, so when the filter gets clogged, it starts, whistling at you and tells you to change it. And then also later in the afternoon, they come back and pick up boxes into which you can put batteries for recycling and I think a couple other items as well. But all that information is included. And very cool program.
Looks like April 23rd.
Oh, thank you. I knew if I talked about it long enough, you'd have me. April 23rd.
Thank you, Eric.
Thanks.
I just want to wish everyone who celebrates Ramadan Mubarak for the month of Ramadan, holy month of Ramadan.
Great. All right. Item 18 is report from city staff. City manager.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Deputy city manager. Nothing for me. Our city attorney.
I just want to offer thanks to the Senior Center for hosting us for so long, and
Yes.
a reminder to everyone in the public that we will be back at Harvett Hall at our next meeting on the 19th.
For the first time since the end of March 2020.
Yes. Our city clerk.
Yeah, I'll just do a plug for the Community Police Review Board Community Forum that's coming up April 20th at 6 p.m. and it's via Zoom.
Great. Thank you. Can I get a motion? We're at item number 19. Can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved, Thomas.
Second.
Taylor.
Moved by Thomas, seconded by Taylor. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned, but we're going to go into our work session. Do people want to take a 5-minute break? We'll take a 5-minute break. return to our work session for April 5th, 2022. And we were on the item of Forest View relocation proposal update. And where we left off is really just trying to iron out a few things. The last of the conversation where we were was really talking about the amounts for the residents. And I think right before we were leaving, there'll be some more topics that I think will be included in addition to whatever else comes up. But one was a mention about the letter from the CWJ, and really the tenants, the Forest View tenants, where they were essentially requesting 50% of the money of the funds up front. And they gave some examples of the cost for down payment and first month rent. So, and the other thing that so if we can start with maybe revisiting the conversation, what I heard was a consensus that everybody did want to go back to 2019. We had I wouldn't say a majority of council proposed this, but the majority of what I heard was people wanted 100% of payments back to March of 2020, if I heard that correctly. Now, that wasn't the majority of council, but that was the majority of the comments that I've heard so far. I put out a proposal. Like I said, I wasn't married to it. I was just, from everything that I heard. The one thing that was also mentioned is going back from February 2020 back to when the CZA was created in 2019, those individuals would get payment, but I did hear some offerings of only giving them $7,200. So we can pick up the conversation from there.
I would just like to pick up where, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, please go ahead.
I just want to pick up where John Thomas kind of started or ended and made comment that we're talking about like 5 households. I would like to see if we can find the money, the full amount for everyone, recognizing that not all of it will be covered by ARPA. But so that's my opening gambit.
I agree.
One of the, when I gave, the percentages and such, a part of my thought process was, how do we acknowledge that there was, some challenge for the individuals that moved away for reasons we all don't know, but also, being a little, considering that, we don't have all the funds in the world to, do this project. And if there was a consideration for $7,200 being somewhere in this mix, I would just suggest the council considers that. If that's, because that was, a little bit of the promise by the CZA. The other thing that I want to remind council is that even though we don't have a legal obligation to this at all, I know that we all feel morally that we want to do what we can for the tenants there. So I'll just put it out there. Is there any considerations for how we could, involve $7,200 as the least amount anybody would receive? And if no one has any thoughts or suggestions, then we don't have to go down that road.
I had proposed the 7,200 amount for those at the time of the CZA signing, only because at that time we were initially told they weren't on board at all. They were to get nothing, and I felt that they do deserve to have some type of payment. If we went the route of the full payment as everybody else is getting, I would be okay with that too. But at this point in time, the 7,200 for those folks, and then the full amount for those above that March 20th date.
One of the things I don't know, that helped my perspective in this, and I'm certainly not being combative at all, is just, again, for me it was perspective taking, is that, you know, an hour ago, without blinking, we all were fine.
Is to do exactly that. So if there's a need in our community that we maybe can't necessarily achieve using ARPA funds because of kind of that stricter guidance in the final rule, this has kind of presented itself as a way to create even more flexibility within the ARPA funds. So there's really no, the Treasury is kind of encouraging governments to take that as well, in a way, because it's requiring you to either say that if we were to do this, we would do a calculation of how much revenue we lost, or they're just streamlining it and saying, hey, governments, you can all say we have $10 million in lost revenue and rely on that as you go forward in the administration of your ARPA funds.
Yeah, so the bottom line is, technically, when it comes to the ARPA reporting, we are going to say we're going to elect the 10 million. That's what most every city's doing. We're going to elect to declare 10 million as revenue replacement. We still feed that money into the same program, so the output is the same at the end of the day, but some of the back end reporting is streamlined. And also, we have more flexibility on how we can use those funds should your priorities change over time. But if you see cities spending, you know, ARPA recovery dollars on road projects, for example, road projects aren't part of the final rule as terms of an eligible project, but technically cities can declare the 10 million and then use that 10 million to fund other projects. So for us, it's more of the back end. It's kind of streamlined some reporting, but that rule came out after we set our priorities, and we're marching ahead with those same priorities.
Thank you.
I think what's important for council discussion tonight is you see all these topics. Some of them we're waiting on a study to be completed, or we're actively working through. But if you see other ones that are a top priority for you, we can kind of bump some of these to the top of the list. Or if you see some that you want to revisit, we have a new council. Obviously, we've got two new members. If there's some things that you want to revisit, you certainly can as well. Or if you just want to redirect a little bit, you can do that now. You can schedule additional work sessions. But basically, we're going down this list as quickly as we can to start implementation. So if you want to steer us in a different direction, it's just good to get that feedback and get those discussions going.
I'll just throw out one thing that I've mentioned to Jeff directly as well, which is one of the larger chunks we have as a possibility here is that social service needs assessment and capital planning, or seed funding for initiatives. And I just said, if we're going to be creating something like a grants program, just really being as transparent and communicative as possible, because I have some concerns that, those who kind of know how the system works or who've been paying attention to this over time will be more likely to come forward with really cool ideas. We know that the need is always greater than our ability to support it financially. And so just making sure that we don't kind of put ourselves in a position where people are left out or organizations are left out, because I think if we don't do the needs assessment, there's some risk of that, but also, just being communicative and being transparent, making sure people know this funding is there and we have an intention to use it. I think as time goes on, we're going to continue to get proposals or ideas. So whatever we can do to make sure that's fair and equitable.
I appreciate your saying that. I mean, I think one thing that we could do to ensure that is to essentially have a graduated rollout of those grants, so that, you know, somebody who's well prepared can apply early on, but then there will be space for others in the next, whatever the next periods are, if it comes to the consciousness, to the knowledge of others who didn't have that knowledge to begin with, and then have a chance to apply, so that maybe you only get one bite at the apple, but others will then be able to.
All right. Any other thoughts? Thank you, Rachel. We are going to move on to information packet discussions. We'll start with March 24th.
IP2 with the deer management annual report, do we have any flexibility or options? I remember campaigning and sitting in the audience and listening to the mayor talk about going back to the Natural Resource Commission however many times.
The DNR staff is going to give an update to the Natural Resource Commission at their next meeting on our behalf, and then we may, as staff, we may go before the Natural Resource Commission at their second meeting or their following meeting later this summer to answer any questions they have about our situation. But what we're really trying to do now is work cooperatively with the DNR. We want to use their expertise to make our bow hunt program more successful, while respecting the community's wishes on the boundaries, so to speak, of what bow hunting could be done. So I think they've got some ideas that might help us improve the numbers that we're seeing out of our bow hunt. But we're also sharing with them, the data that you see here. We had a more in-depth discussion with them a few weeks ago to say, even if we were to double or triple our success rate with our bow hunt program, we're not going to get in front of this. And so we've sent them kind of the exact locations of where we have accidents, and we're trying to say, if a community-wide sharpshooting effort isn't acceptable still to the Natural Resource Commission, can we explore some very targeted ones in areas where we clearly are having some property damage and risk and have some significant public safety risk that seems to be growing quickly with the population. And the staff is definitely open to having those conversations with us. I think as long as we continue to try to work and improve our bow hunting program, I get the impression that they may be open to us revisiting a limited sharpshooting just to get in front of the situation. Mayor Teague joined us for at least one of those NRC meetings. It's hard to predict exactly where it'll go, but we're working on it. The numbers are definitely concerning to see how quickly that population is bouncing back. That's kind of what we feared, and now we're seeing that play out, both in the deer count, but also in the collisions that our public safety folks are responding to.
Yeah, I appreciate all the work that's gone into revisiting this, and it always did seem to me to be something where, we're proceeding in good faith. We've initiated the bow hunting. Let's see how it works, and report back to the state on what our findings are, and see if the state then can see that we may have reasonable argument to do a hybrid if necessary to try to bring the numbers down. And it could be where we see there's a dramatic increase in the deer population. So I think this all sounds really encouraging to me, that we're just proceeding and observing and basing our suggestions and conversations on the facts on the ground, and just taking it from there. But I think we're doing all we can in good faith to try to make this thing work.
Yeah, and I hope they'll also understand eventually that the community itself has some red lines in terms of where this activity can take place, and we're not going to be able to get past that.
Any other comments from information packet March 24th?
I think IP4 sounds like it's going to be a really interesting idea and a lot of fun. Public Works open house.
All right, moving on to March 31st, and we do have the joint entities meeting agenda item for April 18th.
Just a reminder on that, at your previous meeting, you asked us to put the guide link, to ask the guide link staff to be there for a quick update, so we'll do that.
Were there any other additional things council thought of?
I mean, none of us know where the pandemic is headed at this point. I think it would be helpful if they're willing to have Sam Jarvis or someone speak as well, just to give a broader community update for the county and the state.
I think that'd be great. We know that we still have the child care for for so.
And I don't know if it's appropriate now, but I have talked to Jennifer Banta, who is she was part of the statewide kind of task force on childcare that helped provide recommendations to Governor Reynolds, but has been very, very active with a local coalition here, actually in the county. And she would be willing to come give a brief presentation. I told her we've got a lot going on in April, but she was thinking May, or actually was asking, and I guess I'm asking now if that could be possible, simply because I think it could be really informative as we move into strategic planning and thinking about ARPA funds, and just for us to all get on the same page about what is already being done in this area. So obviously I don't set the agenda, but I guess I'm asking that, it would be wonderful if it could be sort of, late spring as we start to talk about stuff.
Yeah,
I realize that's separate from the joint entities, but
sure,
I just kind of hop the line there.
Yep, so I want to just make sure that council know that you're referring to our work session.
Yes, I
having her come here. And I think we took a census of wanting to do that, and we'll get that on the work session in the future. Yeah, but I think that's a great idea.
I leapfrogged, sorry about that.
But yes, definitely on the joint entities meeting, we want to have that in the future. I don't know, I mean, we can certainly propose it, but we already have a big item on there. Guide link, could take up some time, and it's, I think, appropriate for Guide link to kind of get out there as well and give an update.
Yeah, just to be clear, I hopscotched over and I went immediately to our work session discussion as opposed to talking about that being on joint entities, because I know that the last time we met, you did bring it up, and I know there's interest. So I think as we all get better information, then we can go forward. But no, I was not suggesting it again.
Yeah. Has the request to the county already been submitted for the joint, for a Guide link?
No, not yet. I was waiting to get more info.
Okay, and did we confirm that Guide link is available yet, or not quite?
I have not, but I can reach out to Abby.
Okay.
And
The reason I asked is because I know at the last meeting we did talk about child care. So would we consider really reaching out for the child care update at this joint entities meeting, and then, no?
Like I'm the expert here. No, I was thinking more that Jennifer would be able to come and speak to council so that we could know sort of like what opportunities and possibilities there were for Iowa City as we start thinking about strategic planning and whatnot.
All right, so I just want to make sure your hope is that that conversation happens here first before it goes to the county, the joint entities meeting?
I wasn't thinking that we would do childcare at a joint entities.
At all?
Not this one, no.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, that's where I was
all right, no worries.
Confusing.
We'll stay with Guide Link Center, the Guide Link, and then we'll talk about child care at the joint entities meeting in the future. Any other item related to March 31st info packet?
Well, the traffic nerd in me noted letter from the Iowa DOT on pavement markings. In reading the letter from DOT, it referred to the placement of a multi-component durable liquid pavement marking material for the new center and edge lines. Do you know what that material is? The reason I'm asking is, I think I've raised in the past how I see some of our pavement markings fade away very, very quickly. And this sounds like a more durable material that the Iowa DOT is using, at least in this project. So I was interested to know what precisely was being used and start from there, but perhaps that kind of material could be used in those applications where we felt a more durable material was appropriate.
We'll have to circle back to you on that.
Yeah.
Any other items from the info packet March 31st?
I guess I'd just highlight the electric bus bash on April 22nd, which is Earth Day at Riverfront Crossings Park. Yeah, that was at IP15. So excited to see that.
Mayor, I was also hoping you could, everybody could pull out the tentative meeting schedule. I've had a little bit difficulty finding consensus for our strategic planning meeting. It does look like that will have to be in May at some point, and again, we're looking for a half to 3/4 day that could work for the entire council. I've got the dates in May that are open to the facilitator team. I don't know how best to go about this. Previously, we were looking for Monday, Wednesday, Friday, starting at 9:30, and that's where we were running into some trouble. So whether we need to push that into an evening hour, late afternoon, evening, if that makes more sense, if you want to explore different days of the week, I'm not sure, but the facilitators have some pretty good availability here, so if anybody wants to throw out some days or ideas,
Does Wednesday work for people?
Are there any
as a
Wednesdays-
starting?
Are there Wednesdays that work for ECOG?
So the 4th and the 18th are the only two that are open in May, and the 4th, the city attorney is not available. So the 18th could potentially work.
I would be available on the 18th.
Mm-hmm.
That works for me.
I'm good for the 18th.
This is far enough out, I can do it.
Okay.
What time are we? Yeah, I can do it.
Do you have a preference on time? So you have a council meeting the night before. Would you rather start 9:30, or would you want to push that a little bit?
I'd rather not push it.
Yeah.
9:30 is fine.
Keep 9:30?
And just for a time frame, what were we planning?
I would say we probably need a minimum of 4 hours. I'd like to say maybe plan on 5, and maybe we don't get there, but 4 to 5 hours is probably what I would target. If that's too much, if you have commitments or something, that's fine. Just let me know. We can put a hard end date. It'll just affect how we plan for that day.
And what was the start time again?
9:30.
9:30.
So we could do 9:30 and do either a break for lunch or a working lunch, and go to the early afternoon.
Mm-hmm. Just block off the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably a working lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right.
Team building lunch.
Yes.
Pardon? Just a team building lunch,
No
I said.
marshmallows and pipe cleaners.
We can make lunch together.
We could make lunch together. This is an excellent idea.
Okay, thank you. That is very helpful.
Thank you.
All right, anything else there with the March 31st info packet? All right, we will continue on. So Msg Usg updates. They are not able to be here, but we did get some updates, so I'll just kind of read through them. So USG will stock the East Side Food Pantry with sustainable menstrual products for UI students, such as menstrual cups and period underwear. Almost all of the magnets have been distributed to places around campus, the community. And there was also more magnets dropped off at City Hall yesterday. USG met with Iowa legislators to advocate for student resources at the state level. University of Iowa students met with about improvements for higher education institutions in Iowa, including student apartment, rental, and mental health resources and state funding on last Thursday. Many USG members are in D.C. for the week for Big Ten on the Hill lobbying legislators on many issues, including things that are really ensuring basic needs. That includes addressing food insecurity, mental health accessibility, specifically advocating for a TREAT Act, expanding PSLF, which is debt forgiving jobs. If you want more in-depth explanation of what they advocated for, Ellie is actually there and she can share more information when she get back. 30 rooms in the IMU will be available during the lease gap during periods, according to Tanya Vilhauser at the April 1st off-campus housing meeting. Still getting information on how students can apply to this from Tanya, as well as strategizing ways to get information out to students. USG voted to renew its support for a sustainability general education course that will be implemented university-wide. And then Patrick Johnson and Vera Burkowski made an unopposed run for UI student, government president, and VP, and are elected for the 2022 through 2023 executive ticket along with many senators. So we'll have our new people joining us this fall. Those are their announcements. Anything else for the good of the cause today by council?
Just a reminder, we have MPOJC tomorrow, which I think is everyone except you, Mayor, 4:30.
And there was a JEXA meeting, which the budget was approved. Also went through the audit report, and I mean, one of the best things that JEXA ever did was transfer, it appears for a whole variety of reasons, was transfer its essentially budget and accounting to the city of Iowa City, which has helped provide different layers of control and really accurate budgeting, and they got a great report from the auditor. So
great. Anything else for the good of the cause? We are adjourned. Enjoy the rest of your evening.